You are listening to the Holistic Hormone Podcast. I'm your host, Eleanor Duelley, and if you're seeking a deeper understanding of your body's inner workings, the reasons behind its actions and reactions, and you suspect that your hormones might be at play, you are in the right place, my friend. As a functional medicine nutritionist specializing in holistic hormone health for women, I bring together the latest research, my clinical expertise, and my own personal experiences to create a safe space for you to learn and explore. Just remember, this podcast provides information and inspiration for you, not medical diagnoses or treatments. Always consult your own doctor before making any changes. Now, are you ready to dive in? Let's get started. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I'm Eleanor Duelley, your holistic hormone and gut specialist, and you are listening to the Holistic Hormone Podcast. I'm here today to discuss some things about estrogen. And a lot of women think that once they transition into menopause, they no longer need it or are confused about why it's high or why it's low. So today I'm going to kind of dive in to the connection in your body, why it's important, and how important it is to metabolize it properly. So we're going to dive in. When we're talking about estrogen, first we're going to talk about why estrogen is essential. It's not just about reproduction. It actually supports bone health, cardiovascular health, brain health, and a lot of other things that women need even throughout and after menopause. So the next thing we're going to talk about is how estrogen is broken down in the body, or estrogen metabolism, because if we don't understand how estrogen is broken down in the body, that can be one of the things that really impact our day-to-day life and how we feel. It has a lot to do with inflammation and our immune system and how we detox from metabolism is one of the most important things that I work with women in my practice. Because if our body is not properly detoxing, meaning it either doesn't have the right ingredients to carry out the processes in the body to detox, or the detox pathways are clogged up with junk and toxicity and things that we absorb in our body, then the toxic things that need to get out of the body end up recirculating in the body, which causes a whole bunch of things that we do not want. Hormone chaos, fatigue, extra stress, anxiety, and that's just to name a few. We haven't even gotten into any gut symptoms and digestion problems. So that's where we're going to focus today. And if this sounds like something that you need, get ready, because we're going to get started. Okay, so we're going to talk about why we need estrogen. The first very important reason that women need estrogen is bone health. Estrogen plays a really big role in maintaining bone density. So after menopause, when our body stops making so much estrogen every month throughout the ovulation and menstruation process, we have a huge drop in estrogen. And we still need to make some to help protect our bone health. We do not want to be at risk for increased fractures or osteoporosis. And sometimes we see this in the elderly community with women or older women being at risk for breaking bones that much more easy. If they have a fall, if their estrogen is low or has been chronically low for a long, long time, their bones tend to get more weak. The second thing that we need it for is heart health, because estrogen maintains healthy blood vessels that protect our cardiovascular system. So when we don't have enough estrogen, we are at increased risk for anything that can happen to our heart, especially as we age. So there's a lot of protective mechanisms that estrogen provides for us. Another one is brain function. Estrogen supports cognitive function and mood regulation. Any woman out there that's been in a bad mood when they were fluctuating hormones can attest that estrogen has a lot to do with how we handle stress and our overwhelm. When there's a decline in estrogen, it can lead to memory problems, difficulty concentrating, and those things lead to potential for feeling depressed, stressed out, and anxiety. So these all play a role together, which is why it's so important for us to keep an eye on our estrogen levels before menopause, during menopause, and after menopause. We want to make sure that our body is able to produce enough to keep all of these functions well, keep all of them flowing well. The next one is skin and hair health. Estrogen contributes to elasticity and moisture in the skin and even hair growth. So as we age, if we start seeing changes in these things, it can have a lot to do with estrogen, the drying out of skin, which can lead to increased look of wrinkles, dried out hair. People have some, hair thinning as they age. It's partly because estrogen, if there's been a big fluctuation and there's a need for more estrogen. So after menopause, when there's a decrease in estrogen, we need to keep an eye on these kinds of symptoms to see if there's things that we need to do to help make more estrogen. And the last one is our genital health and our sexual health. Estrogen maintains our urinary tract and genital tissues, and postmenopausal women can experience really uncomfortable symptoms like vaginal dryness, urinary incontinence, and increased risk of urinary tract infections. So these can also trace back to lower levels of estrogen. So it's really important for us as women to understand that these symptoms can be because we've had a dramatic drop in estrogen because we're no longer ovulating. But that doesn't mean we don't need estrogen. And the thing about it is when our ovaries, which are pumping out all this estrogen when we're menstruating, when they retire and they naturally transition to not making estrogen anymore, it becomes the job of your adrenals to take on that extra load of making estrogen. And typically women in this age range, in their 40s and or 50s, tend to be very busy and overworked, overloaded women, whether that means they have busy schedules, whether that means they're taking care of career, kids, their parents, they're in some kind of stressful caretaker role, whatever the demand on their body is, including toxicity and things that we're exposed to in our diet, in our water, in our air, in our supplements, in our cosmetics. All of these things contribute to the job that the adrenals do. And when the ovaries retire, the adrenals really cannot take on that extra demand of estrogen if the adrenals aren't well balanced. And so the brain is forced to make estrogen in a different way. Much to our chagrin, the brain can make estrogen by creating body fat in the stomach area, the hips, and the butt area, and the thighs. So if you are a woman who is potentially transitioning to premenopause, perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, and you're seeing these changes in your body, in your physical body, where fat is accumulating where maybe it hadn't before, or you see an increase in it, it's because the brain is deciding that you need more estrogen help, and the adrenals just can't do the job anymore. So what I look at as a hormone specialist is how your body is making this estrogen, and more importantly, how is it using it, which is what we're going to talk about right now. Metabolizing estrogen is just as important as making it. Are we using it for what we need to use it for? And then when we're done using it, we need to break it down. So it would be like, having if you got a present and you had a big box that you put it in, you would have to break down that box and fold it up into pieces so that you could put it into the recycle bin. You couldn't put it in the recycle bin as a huge, like TV size box. You'd have to break it down in order for it to be taken out of the house. And so there are some things that you can do to improve estrogen metabolism. And the very, very first one is support the liver. I will always tell you supporting the liver is going to dramatically change and improve your lifestyle, because this is the first step in estrogen metabolism. Supporting liver health can be done through eating a diet rich in things like broccoli, Brussels sprouts, and kale, which I know might not be everybody's favorite, but it's important for women at this stage to make sure they're getting at least one of those vegetables in daily, one of those servings, that is, to enhance detoxification, because these vegetables have compounds in them that break down estrogen. Okay. Also, when I do Dutch testing, which is the hormone testing I provide for my clients, we can measure how the body breaks down each of the estrogens in your body. So we can get an idea of if there's a nutrient missing, i.e. These detoxing ingredients that come from these vegetables, are those missing in the chain of events that needs to happen to break down this estrogen? The next thing that we can do to improve estrogen metabolism is taking care of our gut, because balancing the gut is really important, because after the liver breaks down the estrogen into metabolites, it takes it to the gut, basically dumps it in the gut. And if there aren't the right balance of gut bacteria, meaning are some of the bacteria overgrown when they shouldn't be? Or is there some missing? Or if you had taken a round of antibiotics in the last year, there's probably a lot of regrowth happening. So our guts are pretty much always not balanced. And so when we eat pro and prebiotic foods that are fermented, like sauerkraut and kimchi, things like that, we're actually boosting our body's ability to balance, because we're feeding the bacteria that needs to be fed. And by doing that, it keeps other bacteria from overgrowing. So there really aren't good and bad bacteria. I know that that's been going around as a saying, just like good and bad cholesterol. That's not really a thing either. But what can happen is it can get overgrown and start causing problems. So while we're maintaining a diet that's rich in fiber, that's why fiber is so important. And I'm not talking about the stuff that you stir into water and drink, although some brands can be helpful if need be, but your body really wants those fibers that come from whole vegetables. This helps with the breakdown of estrogen. And another thing that we can do is reduce our exposure to something called xenoestrogens. Now, xeno, it sounds kind of like out there, but what it is are toxins that mimic estrogen in the body. And so basically it's chemicals that get absorbed either through our skin, or whether we're eating them or drinking them. Plastics can get absorbed into our food. If you heat up something in a plastic container, whether it's a takeout container or even some storage things that we can get, like those Rubbermaid containers, if we put those in the microwave, the plastics get absorbed into the food. So when we eat those chemicals actually look chemically like estrogen. So they can get into the estrogen receptors. We need real estrogen to get into those receptors so that the body can finish the processes that are happening. But when those fake or xenoestrogens gum up the receptors, it not only prevents the actual estrogen from being used, but it causes too much estrogen to be floating in the body, because the brain had already made it. The brain had found a way to make it, and it's not being used. So it just causes all kinds of problems and buildup in the body. And when we get estrogen buildup or estrogen dominance in the body, that's when we start experiencing the symptoms like hot flashes or mood swings or feeling like we're overwhelmed and out of control. That's not actually in our head. That's because there's too much estrogen floating around in the body, because the intention is not being met for that estrogen for the reason that had been made. The last one we kind of know. Exercise and hydration are really important because we're trying to detox the body. So exercising is going to push toxins out through the skin when we're sweating, and estrogen, broken down estrogen, can be excreted that way. Most of it is excreted in our poop, but the body is always finding ways to get toxicity out of the body. So if we can focus on those strategies, then we are helping our body's systems break down the estrogen in the body and promote hormonal balance. Because the reason why we need to be so focused on detoxing specifically estrogen out of the body is because proper metabolism ensures estrogen levels do not become too high, because that would cause estrogen dominance. And when there's too much floating estrogen, you are at an increased risk for breast cancer, uterine fibroids, and any other hormone-related disorder or disease in the body. Estrogen metabolism involves converting estrogen to other metabolites in the liver. So these metabolites need to get out of the body through bile, which is produced in the liver, but it's held by the gallbladder, or our urine. So we need to get this stuff out so that it doesn't cause us problems. It doesn't flood the brain with imbalance, which can cause migraines, which can lead to disturbed sleep, which can lead to unhealthy eating patterns. And so we kind of fall into these downward spirals when we feel an imbalance in the body, and we try to grasp at things that are comforting to us, even when they're not the healthiest options. So a lot of the times, this isn't your fault. The way that you're reacting, you're just looking for some kind of relief and some kind of comfort. So let's look at the reason why you feel imbalanced or feel the need to reach out and do those things so that we can prevent the spiral. Also, getting extra estrogen out of the body is really important for cancer prevention. We want to make sure this extra estrogen is not hanging around, especially in breast tissue, in the cervix, and other places where women develop cancerous cells. We want to make sure the estrogen is properly metabolized when it is done, because the estrogen, when it is done being useful in the body, it now becomes a toxin. So let me say that again. The body makes estrogen. When the estrogen is able to be used, we use it. If we cannot break it down and if we cannot get it out of the body, it causes problems. So we have to make sure that our all over health, what's floating around in our bloodstream, is actually what needs to be there. Because if there are things that are detected in our bloodstream, we will have a huge inflammatory reaction. So all of you know what an inflammatory action feels like in the body, whether it's uncontrollable sneezing, whether it's breaking out in hives, whether it's food allergies, whether it's nausea, whether it's headaches. Like, these symptoms that we encounter on a daily basis are telling us that there's something in our bloodstream that shouldn't be there. And as women, we have this added toxic load that we need to pay attention to, because things kind of come off the rails when we tend to be inflamed and irritated and unable to get toxicity out of the body. So when we understand the connection between estrogen, how it works in the body, the detoxing of estrogen and getting it out of your body, we can begin to unravel the symptoms that women are experiencing. And rather than reaching for patches and injections that bring up estrogen, we need to look if the body processes are actually happening the way that they're supposed to. Because when they do that, there really doesn't become a need for those, or maybe it's a last resort. So I hope you take all of this in. If you have any questions about estrogen or estrogen detox, reach out to me. I offer a free 20-minute consult, and the testing that I use in my practice will help us identify where in the process the imbalances are starting. Because if you can get to the root cause of imbalanced estrogen, you can pretty much help influence all of the things in your life, your metabolism, your sleep, your mood, all of the things that we kind of struggle with at this point, and we can help relieve and balance those well. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I would love for you to subscribe to my YouTube channel, where I put out a podcast every other week, and I'm here to educate and empower you as a woman. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in to the Holistic Hormone Podcast. I appreciate you being a part of our community, and I hope you found today's episode truly valuable. If this podcast meant something to you and you'd like to show your support, please consider leaving me a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Your reviews help others discover this valuable information. Don't forget to stay connected with me on social media. You can always find me on Instagram at holistic.hormone.specialist, where I share insights, tips, and updates to keep you informed and inspired. And if you're interested in exploring my latest programs and resources, head over to nourishingnutrition.net to see what's new and how you can further your journey to holistic hormone health. Once again, thanks for being part of this podcast family. Your health and well-being matter, and I'm here to support you every step of the way. Until next time, take care and stay hormonally balanced.